For 30 years, San Francisco lived behind a wall it built on purpose. It ran along the waterfront, 2 decks of gray concrete stacked one on top of the other, carrying cars where the city used to meet the bay. It threw a shadow over the old Ferry Building. It hummed all night, and almost everyone who looked at it agreed on one thing: they hated it. Here is the part that is harder to say out loud. They hated it, and twice they were asked to take it down, and twice they said no. Then, at 4 minutes past 5 on the afternoon of October 17th, 1989, the ground moved. It was a Tuesday. Tens of thousands of fans were filing into Candlestick Park for the 3rd game of the World Series. 2 local teams, the whole city half watching. The shaking lasted about 15 seconds. When it stopped, the freeway on the waterfront was still standing, but it was finished. Nobody voted for what happened next. That is the strange thing about this story. The city had spent decades unable to free itself from something it did not want. In the end, it did not free itself at all. Let me take you back to before the wall. Look at an old map of the San Francisco waterfront, and you will see a working edge of the city. Piers, ferries, the Ferry Building with its clock tower, the front door for anyone arriving by water, back when arriving by water was how most people came. The Embarcadero was the seam where the city met the sea. Then the country fell in love with the freeway. In the 1940s, San Francisco drew up a plan, a whole network of elevated highways, threaded over and through the city, the future as engineers imagined it. The road along the waterfront was one piece of that plan. On the state's books, it was Route 480. For a while, it even carried an interstate shield. Construction began in the spring of 1955. The first stretch opened in February of 1959. A double-deck freeway, one level of traffic riding above another, lifted on concrete columns over the Embarcadero. It was supposed to keep going. The plan had it curving north and west along the shoreline, reaching toward the Golden Gate. It never got there, because something happened in San Francisco that had not happened in many American cities. People looked at the network on paper, at what it would do to their hills and their views and their neighborhoods. And they refused it. They organized. They packed meetings. In the spring of 1964, a large crowd gathered in Golden Gate Park to say no to any more of it. And it worked. Of 10 freeways the city had planned, 7 were stopped before they were ever built. But here's the catch. You can stop a road that is still on paper. It is much harder to remove one that is already standing. The waterfront freeway had opened before the revolt fully caught fire. So when the plan collapsed, this piece was left behind, a fragment of a future the city had already decided it did not want. It ran from the Bay Bridge to Broadway and then simply stopped, its ramps ending in the air, pointing toward a road that would never be built. That is the thing to hold on to. It wasn't just ugly. It was a monument to a choice the city had made halfway. They had the will to stop the rest. They did not have the will to take down the part that was already there, so the wall stayed. And the city talked about it the way you talk about something you are stuck with. The politicians said it out loud. In 1973, a member of the Board of Supervisors named Dianne Feinstein promised she would see it come down. Years later, as mayor, she put her name to a document that called the structure exactly what everyone felt it was: a concrete monolith that divided the city's neighborhoods. This was not a fringe opinion. This was the establishment. The people in charge agreed the thing was a mistake. Now think about what that should mean. In a city that hated a freeway, run by leaders who hated it too, removing it should have been the easy part. All you needed was to ask. In June of 1986, they asked. There were 2 measures on the ballot. The main one, backed by the mayor and most of the board, proposed replacing part of the freeway, opening the waterfront back up, trading the concrete for a boulevard. It was the chance the city had been waiting for, handed to the voters directly. They turned it down, 58-42. The other measure, a plainer yes or no on tearing it down, lost by even more. Sit with that vote for a second, because it is the center of this whole story. The city that hated the wall, offered the power to remove it, chose to keep it. Why? Not because they suddenly loved it. They were afraid. Tens of thousands of cars used that freeway every day. The count near the Ferry Building ran to around 70,000. People pictured all of that traffic pouring down onto ordinary streets, and they flinched. They could not see the other side. The columnist Herb Kahn, the voice of the city, was uneasy about it and voted no anyway, saying the place probably needed all the freeways it could get. Feinstein, watching her own city refuse the thing she had fought for, called it what it was, a vote for the automobile. But it was more than that. It was a vote for the wall you know over the opening you can't picture. The freeway was a burden they understood. What would replace it was a blank. And when the choice is between a familiar weight and an unknown lightness, people reach for the weight almost every time. You have probably done it yourself. Most of us have. So the freeway won. The city looked at its own front door, boarded up for a generation, and decided, on the record, by a wide margin, to leave it boarded up. That should have been the end of it. For a while it was. 3 years later came the afternoon I started with, October 17th, 1989. 5:04 in the evening. The earthquake they would name Loma Prieta after the peak near where it broke, out in the Santa Cruz Mountains along the San Andreas Fault. Magnitude 6.9, 15 seconds. In those 15 seconds, the quake took dozens of lives across the Bay Area, 12 of them in San Francisco, where buildings burned in the Marina District. And down on the waterfront, the double-deck freeway, the one the city had voted to keep, was hit hard enough that the engineers closed it. Just like that, the road that carried tens of thousands of cars a day carried none. It became a ghost road, and it stayed one for more than a year. A freeway standing over the waterfront with nothing moving on it. The traffic gone, the hum gone, the structure still there, waiting to learn its fate. And now the city had to decide what everyone had spent 3 years refusing to decide. The state's engineers had a straightforward answer. Fix it. Retrofit the structure. Make it safe. Put the cars back. It was the funded option, the cautious option, the one that changed nothing. The wall could go back up, but the mayor now was a man named Art Agnos, and Agnos did something risky. He looked at the broken freeway and saw not a repair job, but a door that had come open by accident, and he moved to keep it open. He pushed to tear the thing down instead of rebuilding it, which meant fighting the state in Sacramento for the money and the permission to do it. He did not have the city solidly behind him. He had the same divided city that voted no in 1986. The merchants of Chinatown and the Wharf were alarmed. They depended on that freeway to funnel tourists and shoppers and cars to their doors, and they fought hard to have it rebuilt, warning that their business would dry up without it. This was not a clean fight of good against ugly. It was a real argument, with people's livelihoods on one side of it. When it finally came to a vote on the Board of Supervisors, the freeway lost by 1, 6-5. Even then, with the thing already broken and closed and useless, the city could barely bring itself to let it go. At the end of February 1991, the crews came with their equipment. A midday ceremony marked the start, and then, piece by piece, the double-deck freeway came down off its columns. A Chronicle newspaperman, Carl Nolte, called it what the city had felt for 30 years, a double-decker prison wall, and now, he wrote, it was finally gone. Now here is where I want you to look again at what actually happened, because the easy version of this story is the wrong one. The easy version says, the city hated the freeway, and finally it got rid of it. A happy ending. Good sense wins. But that is not what happened. The city had the chance to get rid of it and said no. Twice. if you count both measures on that 1986 ballot. Left to its own free choice in calm weather, with the mayor and the newspapers and the establishment all telling it the wall was a mistake, the city chose the wall. It would have kept choosing the wall. The freeway did not come down because the people finally found the courage to take it down. It came down because the ground shook it loose. That is the turn, and it is a quiet, uncomfortable one. The thing we tell ourselves is a story about a city freeing itself. It is really a story about a city that could not free itself, that needed an earthquake to do what its own will could not. The disaster did not defeat the city's wishes. It rescued the city from its own fear. It reached in and made the choice that the people, left alone, kept refusing to make. And once the choice was forced, once the wall was actually gone and could not be voted back, the strangest thing happened. Nothing bad came of it. The traffic that everyone was so afraid of, the 70,000 cars with nowhere to go, did not drown the city. It dispersed. It found other ways. The merchants who were sure their business would collapse without the freeway watched their fears fail to arrive. The catastrophe they had voted to avoid, the reason they had defended a road they hated, simply never showed up. Walk the Embarcadero today, and you would never guess a wall stood there. Where the double-deck freeway ran, there is a wide boulevard lined with palm trees, a streetcar running down the middle of it, and a promenade along the water where people walk in the evening. They named a stretch of it after Herb Komm, the same columnist who voted to keep the freeway. The Ferry Building, the old front door that spent 30 years in the freeway's shadow, was cleaned up and reopened, and today it is one of the most alive places in the city. All told, the work along the waterfront ran to something like $700 million, and the port would later describe what had happened as turning an industrial service corridor into an outdoor living room for San Francisco. The city got back a piece of itself it had walled off for a generation, and it got that piece back only because it lost the power to keep saying no. There is a cost buried in that, and I don't want to walk past it. The mayor who forced the freeway down, Art Agnos, was out of office within a couple of years. He lost his job that same December. The demolition arguments were still fresh, beaten by a challenger in a close race. His defeat was about many things: homelessness and a sense the city was slipping more than any single road. I would not tell you that the freeway cost him his office, but it is a fact that the man who spent his political capital to open the waterfront did not get to stand on the finished boulevard as mayor. Someone usually pays for pushing the wall down. It is rarely free. But the deeper thing this road leaves behind is not about one mayor's career. It is about the vote. Twice, a city that hated a wall chose to keep it because the wall was known and the opening was not. That is not a San Francisco story. That is one of the most human things there is. Think about your own life for a moment. Think about the thing you complain about and do not change. The job, the house that is too big now, or too full of a life that is over. The habit, the arrangement, the routine you have outgrown and keep anyway. We defend these walls. We vote to keep them in the small daily elections of our own lives, not because we love them, but because we cannot picture what is on the other side. And the weight we know feels safer than the lightness we can't imagine. And most of us never get an earthquake. Go stand on the Embarcadero at dusk, where the wall used to be. The light comes off the bay now. It reaches the Ferry Building, the boulevard, the faces of the people walking where the columns once stood. For 30 years, this was all in shadow, not because anyone wanted the shadow, but because taking it away meant stepping into an opening no one could see the far side of, and the city could not make itself take the step. It took 15 seconds of a shaking earth to take the step for them. And what waited on the other side was not the disaster they feared. It was this: the water and the light and the view they had voted twice to keep hidden from themselves. The road that stood here was a mistake the city knew was a mistake and kept anyway. That is the part I keep coming back to. Not that they tore it down, that they couldn't, that something else had to. So here is the question the empty air over the Embarcadero leaves you with, and I'll leave it the way the record leaves it, unanswered. Somewhere in your own life, there is a wall you have voted to keep. You know the one. What are you waiting to shake it loose?